Hey everybody, Austin here again doing Patreon Q&A session number 6. This is long overdue. I just keep putting it off and keep putting it off and keep putting it off. I think I was reaching out for questions for this episode probably 3 months ago, and I meant to have this actually done 3 months ago. Actually, when I was on vacation back in April 2019, and here it is halfway through July. I literally just opened up my recording software, clicked record, and I was just like, I need to do this. Even if I just put some just basic gameplay footage to this, like I have been for the last few or actually pretty much all the episodes, except for episode 1, then whatever. As long as I get the questions out there, my answers out there, we can go ahead and get this up on YouTube and then start working towards Q&A session 7. So for those of you guys not familiar with this setup, basically patrons, either via Patreon or YouTube channel memberships, they can actually pitch in questions via those places to be featured in future videos like these, future Q&A videos. And these are very podcast-like in nature. I don't usually spend any time editing these. I'll put some basic gameplay footage up if you do want to actually stare at your screen for some reason. But feel free to, just minimize this, walk away, just listen, put some headphones on, or just do some stuff around your house or work, or do some work at your job. I don't know. Whatever you need to do, just to listen to the audio and not have to actually sit here, in front of your computer or device. But yeah, this one should be relatively simple. I've actually kind of gone over the questions in my head already, and I'm trying to think how long this is going to take. It probably won't be that long, maybe 20 or 30 minutes. Of course, that's what I said last time. The last one was like an hour long, so we'll see what happens here. So, big shout out to Will the Hatter, James Campbell, aka Jim's Retro Zone, John Evan Bear, and Jeffrey Schaefer. They all submitted questions for this. So anyone out there that is backing the channel via Patreon, make sure you're looking for Q&A session posts to participate. I basically take your questions that are asked and I put them on a spreadsheet, and then when I get enough, I'll go ahead and do a video like this. So yeah, so I don't ramble too much longer. Let's go ahead and get into our first question here. So the first question comes from Will the Hatter, and he asks, as a collector, how do you deal with so many used discs being in such crappy condition? He hates buying discs with scratches, and it seems nearly unavoidable. Even if something works okay, it still feels gross to put damaged games on his game shelf. He's been collecting Xbox 360 era games lately, and the condition is depressing, even at eBay prices. Scratch discs, not really a new thing in terms of collecting. It was a thing back in the 90s. It was a thing back in the early 2000s. It's a thing now. And what you'll find is with popular platforms in particular, it seems to be a greater amount of poorly cared for, poorly taken care of discs. So, how do I deal with that? I don't really consider myself much of a collector anymore. I'm actually not buying many games at all just because money is really tight across the board. And I've played a lot of the games that I want to play, and I have a lot of the games that I do want to play in the future, but I haven't gotten to yet. So I'm not really trying to add to that. I'm not really trying to add to my backlog much at the moment. But when I was collecting games a lot, and if I do still buy the occasional game now, like actually later today, I'm going to run out to the local game store. It's going to be the first time in like 3 or 4 months that I've done this because, again, money's tight. But I do plan on picking up, say, an Xbox 360 title and a couple of PS2 games that are on the very cheap end of things. So how do I deal with, used discs being in crappy condition? Well, I try not to buy them in crappy condition first off. If I'm doing eBay shopping, and there's a game on there, that I want, I look through, first I sort by lowest price plus shipping. And then what I do is I pull up multiple auctions within a certain price range, like a couple dollar range or something like that, and try to really pick out the one that's in the best condition. A lot of eBay sellers these days are actually taking photos of the discs themselves, which is good. I also look at the, the text listing, like, do they have it listed as like acceptable, or do they have it listed as like new or in good condition? And then I just heavily analyze the photos myself. I make sure I find one with good photos, unless it's just extremely cheap, and I can, if it's extremely cheap, maybe what I'll do is if it arrives scratched, even though it might not say it in the listing, then because it was so cheap, I can afford to go get it resurfaced at my local shop, which will make it look like new, assuming depending on how it is scratched. But yeah, I basically just try to scrutinize, the listings that I am looking at on eBay, and that usually works out really well. I actually have had a very good track record. I have actually bought a lot of really cheap PC games for my old Windows 95 and 98 machines over the last 6 months or so for potential streams and things like that. And of probably the 20 or 30 games I've picked up, only maybe 2 or 3 have been scratched. The rest were in really good shape. And for the ones that are scratched, well, if they play, whatever, they play. And if they don't play, I'll go get it resurfaced. If it's a rare console game that arrives scratched for some reason, assuming it's just bottom side scratches, top side scratches you can't do anything about. You can't resurface the top side of a disc. But bottom side scratches, if it's a game... Like, I remember getting the Japanese version of Einhander on PS1 about a year and a half ago. And it arrived quite scratched up. It wasn't mentioned in the eBay listing, and so I was kind of bummed about that. But it cost $3 to go get it resurfaced, and now the disc looks as good as new. So, I try to scrutinize listings on places like eBay. If I'm at like a used shop that actually allows you to look at the discs and the cases before you take them home, then sometimes I do that. It all depends on the game. If I'm buying a more pricey game, or if I have bought a more pricey game, absolutely I want to look at things. I mean, generally I prefer to look at things anyway. But one of my main shops down the street, actually pretty much the only main shop now, Starland, they shrink wrap everything. So unless I manage to get a hold of a game before they take it into the back and shrink wrap it, I actually have no way of looking at the disc. And for the most part, their quality level is pretty good. You'll unwrap the game when you get it home, and the game will usually look very good. I know they do resurface some of their games that come in scratched, so that could be part of it. Now I have had some duds. Some duds definitely have slipped through their quality control system, and that's always a bummer. And sometimes what I do is I either deal with it, or if I'm up for it, I take it back to the shop and get it swapped out for another one. I'm not as diligent about taking the games back these days because I work the graveyard shift. A lot of times I wake up by the time they close their store. So, and they don't open up at 9 o'clock. They open up at like 11. So going and returning the game there is actually very inconvenient. So if it's a really cheap game, $3-4, and I open it up and it's not in the perfect condition that I would like, if it plays, whatever, maybe I'll get it resurfaced in the future. But when I was on a normal schedule, yeah, if I would get a scratch disc from someone like that, I would take it back right away and get it exchanged. But yeah, that's kind of how I deal with it. I know it's probably not the best answer, Will, because I'm not like the avid collector I used to be at this moment in time. That might change, as funds free up and whatnot. But at this moment in time, I'm not there. But I do still like to have my stuff in good condition. The boxes and manuals too. I do prefer having a nice box and a nice manual. But scratch discs are just a part of it, unfortunately, when it comes to collecting CD-based games. And if it's something that is pricey in particular, or higher cost, not necessarily pricey, but if I'm paying $20 or $30 for something and it's something I really like, then I will, if I happen to get one that is relatively scratched, I'll go up to the shop and pay $3 to $5 to get it resurfaced. I know my local shop, they have tiers, like regular CDs I think are $3, DVDs are $5, and I think Blu-rays might even be like $6 or something like that to resurface. So but yeah, if you have a local shop like that does that, don't be afraid to get your stuff resurfaced, So yeah. But yeah, we'll hope that answers that. And next question comes from James Campbell, aka Jim's Retro Zone. He actually gave me these questions when he was still Jim's Retro Zone, but I don't believe he's doing YouTube videos anymore. So he's going back to his regular name, James Campbell. So thank you, James, for your questions. And he has two. So he has. His question is, I have a question for you to answer in the video. If this has already been asked, please let me know. Is there a game so hard that you have never beat it? If so, what game is it? And yes, I actually have answered this, I think, on my first or second Q&A session. But, you know, the thing about doing these Q&A videos is that, like, I don't usually write down preliminary answers and things like that. So, like, some of these answers are actually kind of open-ended, and there are multiple answers to it. And I'm pretty sure I've answered in the past R-Type 2. That is definitely one that was so hard for me. I have never beaten it. I still want to try to beat it eventually, but it's going to take so much effort that I keep pushing it off and pushing it off and pushing it off. But R-Type 2 Arcade is insanely difficult. It's, you know, the R-Type series is super memorization heavy, and if you're not putting a lot of time into the game, you're not going to make it anywhere in the game. It's just all trial and error and execution. You have to know exactly what's coming up at all times and how to deal with every situation. And that's how a lot of games are, but it's kind of to the extreme with R-Type 2, where not only do you have to know enemy placements and stuff like that and how to deal with them and their attack patterns, but there's also a ton of sort of environmental hazards in that game, which makes it really, really tough to deal with. R-Type 1 was a lot like that with environmental hazards, but not quite to the extreme that R-Type 2 is. R-Type 2, there's one level, it's either stage 4 or 5, where these enemies start coming in, they start dropping these blocks, and they basically block you in and to like these little corners of the screen, and it's, you know, if you don't do things right, the screen will scroll over so far and you'll just get crushed by them, and it's just you guys will probably see me play it sometime on stream eventually. But yeah, that's one of them. Another one that came to mind recently was Cobra Triangle on NES. I know I could probably beat this game because I have friends that are similarly skilled, and they've beaten it. And, you know, some of these games, like Cobra Triangle, it's about knowing the right strategies, and that's the same with R-Type 2, actually. It's about knowing the right strategies, but discovering those strategies on your own can be really tricky. And, you know, so having help from friends, looking up walkthroughs and stuff like that can definitely get you in the right direction. And I plan on doing that sometime in the near future with Cobra Triangle. I would love to be able to beat that game consistently, like with Battletoads, and then do a Let's Play of it. But yeah, that's another one. Let's see, Gradius 5, another shoot 'em up that I really enjoy. It is so hard, I have never beaten it. Not even come close to a 1 credit clear, and I haven't even been able to credit feed my way through the whole game. I don't think I've unlocked, like on my recent save, I don't think I've unlocked free play, so I can't just credit feed to the end of the game. Yeah, extremely difficult game. It's not too bad in the early stages, but it's a very long game. It's like, I think it's over an hour long. It's pretty ridiculous, and so there's so much to learn in that game. It's a very fun game. It's a very great game, but yeah, it's kind of yeah, it's so tough for me. I've never even finished the game normally. Like a lot of shoot 'em ups, you can credit feed, and then through subsequent playthroughs, you can get better at the game to the point where maybe you get close to a 1 credit clear, or maybe you only use 1 continue. The goal is always to beat the game without continuing with these arcade shoot 'em ups. But with Gradius 5, man, I haven't even gotten close to that at all. I haven't even. Yeah, it's extremely difficult, so that's another one. Yeah, I know there are a lot of other games, and I'm sure this question will come up in the future, and as I think of other games in the future, I can answer this question again. So, but yeah, I hope that answers that, James. And he has another question. He says, this is about Kitty. What treats do you give her? And do you give her dry food or wet food or both? So for those of you guys that don't know her, I have a cat. Her name is Patchouli, and she occasionally makes appearances on my live streams here. And she's made some appearances on some of my older videos as well, like my Retro USB AVS review and the AVS Addendum review. Actually, she might only be in the Addendum review, but yeah, she's been in some videos and some prior random videos as well. So. Yeah, I do give her dry food. I give her a quarter cup of dry food a day, and I feed her wet food twice a day. She gets 1 can of Fancy Feast, and each time I feed her, and I usually feed her when I wake up around 7:30, 8 p.m., and then I feed her again when I come home from work, usually again around 7:30 or 8 a.m. Yeah, so she gets fed her wet food once on 12-hour intervals, and then at night when I give her wet food, she also gets a dry food refill. I might start cutting back a little bit on dry food, just a tiny bit, because she is gaining a lot of weight. I do need to play with her more often. She doesn't really get a lot of exercise because I'm usually in here streaming and stuff like that. So she gets lots of petting and she gets lots of food, but not a whole lot of movement, so we need to try to change that, and cutting down on the dry food is good for that too. So yeah, I know it's not video game related, guys, but some people are interested in my cat, and so yeah, there you go, James. Hope that answered your question. So I originally, before doing this Q&A, like months ago when I was organizing this, I told myself I was going to grab like B-roll footage of lots of stuff, show off the Fancy Feast, and, show off gameplay for things I'm talking about, but I can't be bothered. I'm too busy right now. So I'm sorry, guys. Okay, so John Evan Bear now. John Evan Bear has 2 questions, and he says, are you going to stream the Contra Anniversary Collection when it comes out? See, this is how delayed I am. This is how much I kept pushing this off and off and off. And I have streamed the Contra Anniversary Collection. I streamed it, I think, the day after it came out, or 2 days after it came out, and it was a really good stream. Lots of viewership. You guys really enjoyed it. And if you guys are interested in that, I have an archive on my channel from a month or 2 ago, so yeah, definitely go check that out. It's a good collection. It's not as good as the Castlevania collection. I find that some of the arcade games have lots of screen tearing, which is really jarring. I don't even remember the Xbox 360 versions having screen tearing when those were ported many years ago. So that was a big disappointment, but overall it's still a solid collection that is definitely worth buying for $20. You get a lot of really good games. I mean, Contra 1 and 2 NES, Contra 1 and 2 arcade, Contra Hardcore, Genesis and Mega Drive, Contra 3 The Alien Wars, you get Operation C on Game Boy, which is a great game. You get the Japanese Contra for Famicom with the extra cutscenes and animations and stuff like that. It's just a really good bundle. It's a really good value. So, still worth it, but not as awesome as the Castlevania collection, if you ask me. And John Evan has another question. Do you think the showrunners of Castlevania will do a storyline about the Battle of 1999, where Julius Belmont destroyed Dracula for good? It was disappointing that the developers of the DS games didn't follow through on that backstory, since they referenced it in the first 2 DS games. Yeah, no, I'm gonna say probably no at the moment, John Evan. I mean, the storyline for the Netflix series. So, John Evan is actually talking about the Netflix Castlevania, and I don't want to spoil too much for people that haven't seen it. And there is going to be a season 3. I'm guessing later this year. When I highlight Castlevania on Netflix, it says a new season is coming or something like that. So yeah, I doubt it, John Evan. I mean, yeah, I doubt it. I mean, the time period that the first 2 seasons take place in is a long time ago, and not anywhere close to 1999. So that alone tells me that they probably won't even, go that way, at least not right now. It's entirely possible they could, end up in that direction later on, but with how things are going at the moment, I highly doubt it. Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't even really think about it right now. And honestly, I don't really, I personally, story in games is fun for me, but I don't get wrapped up in it like some of you guys do. So like the 1999 story with, the DS Castlevanias, it's like, I've completely forgotten about it, actually, and you bringing it up is jogging some memories, and yeah, it doesn't really bother me at all. I played those games more so for the the fun exploration and whatnot and everything. The Julius Belmont modes were fun too. I really liked the additional modes of the DS Castlevania games. They were handled very well. So, but yeah, no, I still don't think, even with that, John Evan, me being in my curmudgeon ways, I don't think they're going to go that route. But you never know. I mean, some of the things they did in the first 2 seasons, surprised me for sure. But I kind of feel like I have an idea on where it's going, and I don't want to talk about it because, again, I don't know how many people listening have actually watched it. So, as much as I do want to talk about it, I'm going to refrain from doing so. But yeah, I hope that answers your question, John Evan. And the last question comes from Jeffrey Schaefer, who he has one question. It is, will you do an LJN stream in the future? So, I've been doing some variety streams recently. I did one of games developed by Rare on the NES, and that was like an 8 or 9 or 10 hour stream. Really fun stream. I'd like to do a follow-up on that, and coincidentally, some of their games they've made are published by LJN. And LJN was a fairly prolific publisher back in the day, prolific for probably a lot of the wrong reasons. They published some really good stuff, but they also had a tendency of just publishing kind of junk as well, or the stuff that might be playable but isn't really of the highest quality. And so they've earned this reputation over the years as just this really poor publisher. I don't really agree with the reputation, because they do have good games under their belt as well. It's not like everything they've done is bad. A lot of publishers back then had some good stuff, they had some bad stuff, and then they just had lots of average stuff, and that was very common, which is something people seem to forget about. LJN just kind of falls into that category. Not everything's bad, not everything's good. A lot of it's just, average. And yeah, there are highs and lows. And yes, I think I will try to do an LJN stream. I don't know if I actually have that as a stream idea. Let me check my my stream list here. So what I do is I do have sort of like a variety stream topic ideas document. And so if I don't actually have that on there, and I don't, so LJN games stream. What I'll probably do is just do like LJN NES games, because switching between consoles is too cumbersome. Trying to switch between like NES and going to Super NES and then Genesis or Game Boy is just too much to micromanage while I'm streaming on YouTube. But yeah, no, I've got that added to my list, and what I'll do is we'll try to do that sometime in the future. So I will definitely consider that. I have a bunch of stream ideas, and as of doing this Q&A session, we're getting really close to October, which means I'm going to have to start practicing for October Let's Plays and things like that. And that will take up a lot of my time in late August and all of September, pretty much. So I'm not sure how many variety streams we're going to be doing in that time frame. But yeah, I've got that added to my list, Jeffrey, so thanks for the suggestion. And this should be fun. I mean, there are some LJN NES games that I do like, and actually, funny enough, Rare developed a couple of them for LJN, actually quite a few for LJN. Like a popular one, well, not a popular one, I guess. It's not unpopular, but it wasn't like a smash hit. It was Nightmare on Elm Street for NES. That was done by Rare, published by LJN. Friday the 13th, also not developed by Rare, but was also published by LJN. And I actually really like that game. That's actually kind of an underrated game. I don't think it's like phenomenal, but it is one of those games that is kind of misunderstood. And LJN published it. So Friday the 13th NES is just a very unique game. You have to know like how the game works. It's not, there aren't many games like it, actually, and I think that's one reason why a lot of people sort of put it down. They don't really understand how it operates. Once you understand how it operates, it's actually a really interesting game. So, but yeah, so not all games by LJN are crap, so to say, and they got some other good ones too. Ones that are actually probably, much better received than those two I just named. But those are two games I do like by LJN. So, yeah, we'll do that in the future. So, but alrighty, guys, that's going to do it for me. I hope you enjoyed this Q&A session. Patreon backers, if you have any questions for future Q&As, if you ever have any questions, feel free to send me a direct message. Just say, hey, this is for a future Q&A video, and then I'll just add it to my list, and then when I get enough questions, I will do an updated video. At the time of this video going live, I'll also fish for some questions for a Q&A number 7, so we can keep this train going. And any YouTube channel members that are listening, feel free to post a comment on any of my videos, letting me know. Just say, hey, this is for a Patreon video or a patron video, because channel members are patrons as well. They're just not on Patreon. They're still patrons. They're just not on Patreon. Yeah, you can any video, any stream, or on any community post, just feel free to just write out of nowhere, this is for a Patreon or a patron Q&A session, and then I'll get your question added to a list. So even if you ask a question and then you remove your backing, like I think Jeffrey might not actually be a backer anymore, but as long as you post the question when you are a backer, I will get to it regardless, because obviously as you can tell, some of these videos I'm taking months to get to, which is bad. I got to get better about that. So, but hey, we finally got to it, and I hope you enjoyed it. But yeah, Patreon backers themselves, look for Q&A question request posts on Patreon. I know a lot of you guys don't check the Patreon stuff, so if you are listening, but you do want to ask questions, just go to any post, and just or reach out to me on Twitter or Facebook. You can send me private messages there as well. Those are actually really good places to reach me, because I check those every day. So, but yeah, we'll try to get Q&A session number 7 rolling soon. And I do enjoy answering these questions, especially off the cuff like this. It just kind of gets my brain, my brain, the old rusty gears in my brain turning. So that's nice. Definitely nice every now and then. So, but yeah, hope you guys enjoy this, and I'm gonna quit rambling here so you guys can go back to doing whatever you were doing. And until the next one, guys, take it easy.